Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in Junior English. We are in our MyPerspectives volume on page 514, 515. We're working with Jimmy Santiago Baca's Cloudy Day. Now, if you'll flip back a couple of pages really quickly to page 511, we're going to learn a little bit about Baca, a great poet who is able to construct poetry out of his life's history, which is a challenging life's history. In his poems, I'm just reading now with you on page 511, in his poems, Jimmy Santiago Baca, born 1952, celebrates the power of literature to change lives. Baca ran away from home at age 13, so some of you will mark that immediately, and served a 5-year prison sentence. Obviously, that's a big deal. While in jail, he learned to read and write and discovered a deep passion for poetry, so there's an interesting story. Following his literary heroes, the poet Pablo Neruda and Federico Garcia Lorca, Baca devotes his life to writing and teaching. His workshops have helped many people improve their lives through writing and education. Cloudy Day now, the background here, Baca actually wrote this poem while serving time in a maximum security prison. So, I mean, we can say there's a few titles that we'll be studying in our junior year. Cloudy Day was included in Immigrants in Our Own Land from 1979. Baca's first collection of poetry published the same year the poet was released from prison. It's a fascinating study. I want you to pay attention to the use of tense at 2B here. We move from present tense to past tense. Also, notice that the word wind or windy gets used 7 times in this poem. It is windy today. A wall of wind crashes against windows, clunk against iron frames as wind swings past broken glass and seethes like a frightened cat in empty spaces of the cell block. In the exercise yard, we sat huddled in our prison jackets on our haunches against the fence, and the wind carried our words over the fences while the vigilant guard on the tower held his cap at the sudden gust. I could see the main tower from where I sat, and the wind in my face gave me the feeling I could grasp the tower like a cornstalk and snap it from its roots of rock. The wind plays it like a flute, this hollow shoot of rock, the brim girded with barbed wire, with a guard sitting there also, listening intently to the sounds as clouds cover the sun. I thought of the day I was coming to prison. In the back seat of a police car, hands and ankles chained, the policeman pointed, "See that big water tank? The big silver one out there sticking up? That's the prison." And here I am. I cannot believe it. Sometimes it is such a dream where I stand up in the face of the wind like now. It blows at my jacket and my eyelids flick a little bit while I stare, disbelieving. The 3rd day of spring and 4 years later, I can tell you how a man can endure, how a man can become so cruel, how he can die or become so cold. I can tell you this. I've seen it every day, and still I am strong enough to love you, love myself, and feel good, even as the earth shakes and trembles, and I have not a thing to my name. I feel as if I have everything. Everything. Now, of course, Cloudy Day will be both literal in this poem as well as symbolic. Notice that we will begin in present tense with "it's windy today." A wall of wind crashes against windows. Jot down in your notes at 2B, what does the wind symbolize here for you? Some of you will say that it symbolizes the inevitability of the situation that he's in. Some of you will see wind maybe as something more humane, something that will take away the negativity and the light. Notice the simile that the wind swings past broken glass and seethes like a frightened cat in empty spaces of the cell block. Notice the language of emptiness in this poem. And then notice in the second stanza here, now we move to the past tense. In the exercise yard, we sat huddled in our prison jackets. Notice on our haunches, this idea of kind of, it's temporary, and there's a sense of anxiety, right? The wind carried our words over the fences, so this is also kind of interesting. It'll take us to our study of Percy Bysshe Shelley's Ode to the West Wind. I think you have to read this poem with Ode to the West Wind as part at three. You can write that down. We've given full exegesis of this classic at learnstrong.net. The idea that the wind in the end will pick up what Shelley hopes, pick up these sparks of inspiration and send them. And you'll remember that final line of that poem, if winter come, can spring be far behind. Some sense of hopefulness, right? But notice here, the wind carries our words over the fences, and then we've got the vigilant guard on the tower, and he's got to hold on to his cap because of the sudden gust as well, right? And then we're back to it. I could see the main tower from where I sat, which will take us to later in the poem when a mention is made of a water tank. And the wind in my face gave me the feeling that I could grasp the tower like a cornstalk and snap it from its roots of rock. Notice when you're incarcerated or you're captured or you're trapped, you're longing for freedom and to somehow try to destroy the things that are keeping you from that freedom. Notice we're back to it again now in terms of tense. The wind plays it like a flute. It's an interesting simile given the idea of music. This hollow shoot of rock, and we'll think about T.S. Eliot's classic, The Hollow Men. We are the hollow men, we are the stuffed men, leaning together, headpiece filled with straw. Alas, our dry voices, when we whisper, are quiet and meaningless as wind in dry grass or rat's feet over broken glass in our dry cellar. I think some of this idea, the referencing of glass and the broken glass, takes us to the hollow men for sure. The brim girded with barbed wire, right? In other words, the symbols of oppression, the symbols of being kept in, right? The symbols of the loss of freedom. With a guard sitting there also, so now we've got two referencing to guards, listening intently to the sounds of clouds cover the sun, obviously cloudy day. And then we're back to past tense. I thought of the day I was coming to prison in the back seat of a police car, so there we are with him. Hands and ankles chained. Again, we're back to this idea with barbed wire of being kept. And then the policeman pointing, saying, do you see the big water tower, that's the silver one sticking up, and that's the prison. In other words, that's where we're going. The line 30 will then begin the process of finishing this powerful poem. And here I am. I cannot believe it. Now, the here I am is interesting because we're not exactly sure where he is, other than maybe I'm beyond this. I'm beyond that experience that I'm remembering on this cloudy day. He says sometimes it's such a dream. Notice the antecedent of the pronoun it. What is such a dream? The experience, probably. Notice a dream, where I stand up in the face of the wind. It's the key line, right? In other words, I refused to allow my circumstance to define my future. As we have said from our study, of course, of Whitman's Leaves of Grass, when bad things happen, don't ask, why did this happen to me? But rather, learn to ask, why did it happen for me? And he says, I learned to stand up in the face of the wind. Like now, it blows at my jacket, and my eyelids flick a little bit while I stare, disbelieving, and then the ellipsis will leave it kind of hanging in the air. In other words, I can't believe that I went through that experience. I can't believe that I made it on the other side. The third day of spring, and 4 years later, I can tell you, notice he's like Whitman speaking directly to you, the reader. Whitman, as we pointed out in our study of Leaves of Grass, Whitman loves to do that. I can tell you how a man can endure. That's a key word, right? Notice our Unit 4 topic is grit and grandeur, right? It takes grit. How a man can endure. How a man can become so cruel. Notice this is become cruel. The experience can make one cruel. And then he finishes it, how he can die or become so cold. There's two different kinds of death, Baca's going to suggest. There's the physical death, but there could be a spiritual death. You can give up in circumstances like the one he's describing. He says, I can tell you about that. I can tell you this, I've seen it every day, and still I'm strong enough to love you, love myself, and feel good. That strong enough is, of course, the key to endurance, right? Even as the earth shakes and trembles, and I have not a thing to my name, I feel as if I have everything. Well, this classic poem of hope, this classic poem of endurance, to use the language of the poem, is central to, I think, our understanding of our own life. Let's go through it quickly at 2A. What for you is the most powerful message? That the most terrible things sometimes can be the most educational things. We've seen this in our lives, no question. At 2b, as we pointed out, the power of tensing here is, I think, quite useful, and then some of the powerful similes and metaphors that are provided here. At 3a, what is for you the text that comes to mind that proves you got to get through some tough stuff in your life? What's the song on your playlist that tells you got to keep going? Don't quit whatever you do. Don't give up. I will throw out Dante, because it seems to me that Baca is channeling some Dante here in the Divine Commedia, especially in Inferno. Remember when Dante is so tired in Canto 24 of Inferno that he just sits down and this guy Virgil has to say to him, up on your feet. This is no time to tire. The man who lies asleep will never wake in fame, and his desire will slip past him like a river. This idea, come on, you got to keep going, you got to keep going. What is the text for you? What is the song for you in your playlist that says that for you and to you? And then finally, at 3b, how do you embrace a poem like this? To what degree does this poem speak to you? What was a time in your life when you had to get through, and you got through, and then it almost seems like a dream, and yet now you recognize that because of that experience, you have everything. Everything. Thank you.